I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, August the 24th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Try a bold, straight shooting tulathromycin injection that does what it's supposed to do with proven efficacy at an affordable upfront price and no BS. For more information, go to macrocin.com. Northern cattle at an $8 premium, at least on the board for sure. And that's nothing new. I mean, they've been trading up there, but it just makes you wonder, what is that live cattle futures contract on the CME tied to? Is it just tied to Texas? Is it tied to the Southern Plains? Well, now we're seeing in tight supplies your northern packers and a lot of your regionals dipping down into Kansas and giving a premium for the better grading cattle, which is propping their weighted average up in Kansas a little bit, but it seems like it's just tied to Texas. And if it's Texas, it's just your big corporate feeders down there. It's really not any producers per se, but it just is really frustrating when we're here at maturity of an August live cattle contract that closed on Wednesday at 178.05, and they're already traded cattle at 186 and actually 187 to regionals in the Northern Plains. So, you know, what the heck is going on? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It does not relate to what the fat cattle market is, and that is what it's supposed to be doing. Actually, you're not getting a whole lot of complaints out of your northern feeders because a lot of them are still hedging to that contract, and they get an $8 basis there. And most of them are counting on that basis whenever they're buying their top quality feeders up there. So if it went away, they'd be in a bind all of a sudden. But you know, I'm not sure why you want to have a contract that doesn't relate to what it's supposed to be relating to. You know, if we had corn that was $1 or $2 a bushel away from what it was actually bringing, you know, that wouldn't make a lot of sense either. But I wanted to tell you about the Fed Cattle Exchange, and it's not that I'm working or promoting the Fed Cattle Exchange, but I'm thinking that it's getting to the point where the Fed Cattle Exchange may be our only tool to have any type of negotiated competition in the Southern Plains. And it's not a lot per se, but it doesn't take a lot. But on Wednesday, the Fed Cattle Exchange had some cattle on the bid on the grid, which you bid the base price. It's the only place that we see negotiated grid is on the Fed Cattle Exchange. They turn a lot of cattle in for negotiated grid up through the 5 areas, mostly in the Southern Plains on a live basis, and some dress trade up north on the negotiated grid. But there's no negotiation to it. It's just whatever the market is, and they turn them in that way. But on the Fed Cattle Exchange, they do bid on the base price on the bid on the grid. And it's not my favorite. I would rather them do the bidding on the negotiated trade, but they do that. But they sold some cattle on the Fed Cattle Exchange on Wednesday, and it was some more of the ones that they sold was some more of those beef on dairy, which the packers absolutely love. It's those dairy cows, and they put the very, very best Angus semen to them, and they come out, and the cattle are a moderate weight, and they hit all the bells and whistles on those grids. But there were some heifers on there that were beef on dairy, and this time they didn't put the reserve too high. They put the reserve on last week's market at 179. And what I'm trying to tell you is, whenever they put that base price down there where they would get some bidding, there was actually some competition that happened. It occurred on there on those cattle. It was from majors and regionals, and they bid on those cattle. They went past the reserve price of 179, and they bid those cattle up to 179.75. So that's what they can give for cattle. Now, likely those cattle will get on that grid, and they will bring back a whole lot more than that because of how they perform hanging on the rail. But it does give us an idea of how we could promote some competition, some negotiation, some bidding on fat cattle in the Southern Plains. I've been talking about the drought in North Texas and Central Texas. I have not talked about how desperate the drought is in the state of Louisiana. It is terrible there. I've got several Feeder Flash gang members. I got a lot of friends in Louisiana, and they are telling me how terrible it is. And I had one Feeder Flash gang member share with me a local sale barn there in southeast Louisiana that had huge receipts this week. And it was Amity Livestock Sales in Amity, Louisiana. And I hope that that's the way that they pronounce that that town and that sale barn is Amity. I used to run cattle in Amity, Missouri, and that's the way they pronounced it there. But knowing Louisiana, it might be Amite, who knows. But I'm going to say Amity, Louisiana. They had 2,400 head of cattle at that sale barn this week. Looking online at their website, they said that they can comfortably hold 1,600 cattle, but they had 2,400. They had 1,100 cows at the sale at Amity Livestock in Louisiana. I'm not familiar with that sale, but that just goes to show you how dry it is down in that part of the country, guys. The heat continues to persist. We are going to find out. We have not found out yet. We haven't had a lot of reports on it, but the losses are going to be more considerable than probably what most people are thinking, especially up in the northern plains there. I mean, that when the heat index gets to 120 plus, and it's been as high as 135 up there in northern Kansas and close to eastern Nebraska where they feed a lot of cattle. People aren't talking a lot about it, but there are going to be considerable losses. That's just fewer cattle for the packers to buy. Also hearing that a lot of fall calving producers are losing a lot of baby calves in this extreme heat. We hate to hear that. Gosh dang, nobody hates to see loss of cattle than cattle producers, people, and that goes double for you people that are not in the industry. We absolutely hate to lose cattle, especially when they're worth this much money. But let's talk about your board on Wednesday, or actually I want to talk about the debate. I assume most of you watched the GOP presidential debate that happened on Wednesday night. I think it was obvious that the most impressive person on the stage was Martha McCallum. Of course, I always think Martha McCallum is the most impressive. She's my all-time favorite there, but I don't like to get too political here because it rubs some of you raw, but all 8 of those GOP presidential candidates, and not to mention my hero, Donald Trump, I would vote for any of them over stumbling, bumbling, mumbling Magoo. And I just think it's obvious there, guys. But you know, Mr. Magoo could not even make a comment about the total catastrophe that's happened in Hawaii until somebody wrote it down on a teleprompter for him. But it's very frustrating to think that our leader cannot even make his own decisions or his own statements. But let's go ahead and talk about the board now for Wednesday. August live cattle futures are actually up a dime, but at 178.05 when they're trading cattle miles ahead of that. October was up a nickel at 178.67. Your back months were mixed from down 22 to up 60, and those gains were on the farthest out months. August feeder cattle were also down. That was because the corn was up more than anything, but August feeder cattle down 47 cents at 245.02. September down 42 cents at 248.57. Back months there were also mixed from down 35 to up 17 on the farthest out traded month. Mentioned corn, December new crop corn up 11 cents, but still well under $5 a bushel at 490 and a half. November new crop beans up 14 and a half at 1360 and a half. Kansas City hard red winter wheat for September up 15 cents at 755. Your fat cattle trade, and not much trade at all. I mean, very, very minimal trade, especially on a direct basis. And the only big sale that we usually quote on Wednesday would be Sioux Falls Regional in Worthing, South Dakota. They only had 100 head of slaughter cattle at that sale because of the heat, which goes to show you it's even hot way up there, and that tells you that there's a lot of northern feedlots that have been suffering in that extreme heat up there. But Iowa had 1,200 head of confirmed sales on Wednesday. On a live basis, they were 185 to 186, which would be an $8 premium to the board, and 292 dressed. Nebraska did not have any confirmed sales up through 2 o'clock, but I did hear that there was some 187 on top quality cattle to a regional in the north. Kansas and Texas have not traded a hoof, and just goes to show you that very, very light supply. Of course, we did have the bid on the grid fed cattle exchange cattle, but that does not get quoted on just straight up negotiated sales. Box beef cutout values. Choice was absolutely steady, unchanged, 317.05 on Wednesday afternoon. Selects up 208 at 291.59. Your slaughter through the first 3 days of this week, 364,000 harvested. That's 3,000 less than last week, and 10,000 less than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Livestock Risk Services, that's Dakota Moss there, and he's got several of these other agents that work with him, but he offices there at the Exchange Building at the Oklahoma National Stockyards. They are your LRP specialists, and basically if you've got any questions, and every time I talk to somebody about LRPs, if they're not already used them, they've got tons of questions. Dakota Moss can answer all those questions for you. Just give him a call. He'll answer the questions for you. There's no pressure there. If you want him to help you out, he will, but he will let you guys know what's going on with LRPs. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DVAuction late in the day on Wednesday, sitting at 244.97. That was down 48 cents, and you got to expect that with pressure on the board, pressure on your live fat cattle market, the extreme heat and everything. That's actually not too bad to lose 48 cents on a 7-day moving average. But if you guys want to check out our newest member of our broadcasting family on DVAuction at 11 o'clock Central here on Thursday, check out New Cambria Livestock Auction. Be the first time you can view that sale online. I'm not sure if they're going to be taking bids on Thursday this week, here today, but that's totally up to auction management. If they want to, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to, and they may want to get a little more familiar with it, but we're not sure. But you can at least see what's going on at New Cambria at DVAuction.com. Talk about your big sales on Wednesday. How about OKC West in El Reno, Oklahoma? 7,100 head. They're a DVAuction broadcaster and bid taker right there. They sold their feeder steers steady to firm, feeder heifers $2 to $4 lower, weaned calves fully steady. Unweaned calves fell on light demand on Tuesday. They usually sell their calves on Tuesday, feeder cattle on Wednesday. A really top sale that they had on Wednesday was 75 feeder heifers, weighed 624 and bring 267. That's steer price on heifers, guys. But OKC was also our NationalBeefWire stick-out sale of the day. Look at this automated auction report. This was just for the Wednesday feeder sale. And you can look at your best tested weights. We're on the heavier end there, of course, because they sold the calves on Tuesday. But 597 head of 6-weight steers in El Reno had an average weight of 648 pounds. Weighted average price $265.98. 1,076 head of 7-weight steers at OKC West, average $758 and $249.67. 828 head of 8-weight steers, weighted average weight $858, weighted average price $231.40. 927 head of big 9-weight steers, average $930 with a weighted average price of $227.39. Look at a couple weight groups of heifers. How about 227 head? Or actually, in the 9-weight steers, I want to tell you that included 318 head in one swath, weighed 906 at 240. Big time quote there. How about the heifers? 227 head of 6-weight heifers, average 649, the weighted average price of 246.86, and 558 head of 7-weight heifers, average 750 at 230.04. Give you several individual quotes from all around the country. How about Equity Cooperative Barn in Walk-On, Iowa? 58 steers weighed 917 pounds and bring 243. Bassett Livestock Auction had a lighter run on Wednesday, sold some heifers pretty high. 62 heifers weighed 1018 at 234 and a quarter and did not appear to be going back for replacements, guys. How about Coffeyville Stockyards, Northtown Barn up in Kansas? They sold a big swath of 3 colored steers, 378 head of them, weighed 950 at 233 and a quarter. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere on Wednesday, your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Huss Livestock Market in Kearney, Nebraska, was 52 steers weighed 722 at 274. And that's your feeder flash for Thursday.